I never expected the world to come crashing down the way it did. I'm a 32-year-old guy, just trying to live my life and keep things together. Then there's Laura, my ex-wife. She's 30, sharp as a tack, and damn good at pretending to be the perfect wife. Or at least, she was, until everything fell apart. Looking back, I wish I could have seen the warning signs, but let's be real, I was blind. At first, I thought things were just off. Small stuff. She'd come home late, or she'd act distracted. Nothing too crazy, right? But then the credit card bills started piling up. Random charges that didn't add up. She swore up and down that it was all nothing, that maybe the bank had made a mistake. It was stupid of me to trust her, but I did. And it nearly ruined me. You ever think you know someone? Like, really know them? Yeah, I thought I knew Laura. But when the truth came out, it hit me like a freight train. Turns out, she wasn't just spending money recklessly. No, she was seeing someone else. And she didn't just cheat on me, she set me up. The bills, the lies, the shady purchases, they were all part of a plan to sink me financially. I don't know if it was the betrayal or the sheer audacity of it all, but when I found out, I was livid. Devastated. All those years I spent believing in her, trusting her, and she was out there, running up debts and sneaking around behind my back. And the worst part? It was all affecting my credit score, destroying it piece by piece. She'd maxed up credit cards in both our names, and when it hit, I was left holding the bag. The whole thing was like some sick joke that I couldn't escape. At first, I didn't even know what to do. The bills were stacking up, and I was just scrambling to figure out how to dig myself out of this hole. I thought about letting it go. I considered just walking away and accepting the damage. I mean, it's not like I was gonna get anything back. But something inside me snapped. It wasn't just about the money or the bad credit. It was about her. The person who turned my life upside down and was now acting like none of it was her fault. I decided I wasn't gonna let her get away with it. Not this time. I started gathering evidence, documenting everything, every lie, every suspicious transaction. I knew it was gonna be an uphill battle, but I didn't care. I'd already lost too much to sit back and let this go. Here's where things got interesting. She had no idea what I was doing. At first, she probably thought I'd just take the hit, pay off the debts, and quietly disappear. But she wasn't prepared for me to fight back. She wasn't ready for me to take it all the way to court. When I filed the lawsuit, she lost it. I mean, she flipped out. I guess she thought I was bluffing. Maybe she thought I wouldn't be able to prove anything. But when that court date rolled around, it wasn't just a fight for my financial future, it became personal. I wasn't just suing her for the debts. I was suing her for every damn thing she'd done to me, for every lie, every broken promise. And she was furious. Furious that I had the nerve to fight back, furious that I wasn't just going to let her walk away scot-free. I don't think she expected me to be serious. You know, the kind of guy who gets screwed over but doesn't have the guts to stand up for himself. But in that courtroom, things were different. It wasn't just about me against her, it was me against the wreckage of my life. It was about getting some kind of justice, even if it was just a little piece of it. As the days dragged on leading up to the trial, I started feeling the weight of everything on my shoulders. The stress, the pressure, the endless questions about whether I was doing the right thing. Laura, on the other hand? She was acting like she had it all under control, like she was untouchable. She thought the system would favor her, thought she could just play the victim and walk away with a clean slate. But that's where she was wrong. And I'm about to tell you exactly what happened next. The day of the trial was one of the most nerve-wracking days of my life. I knew this wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't about fixing my credit score or getting back the cash she had stolen from me. No, this was bigger. This was about me. About standing up for myself after years of being treated like I didn't matter. But honestly, I was terrified. The thought of sitting across from Laura in that courtroom, her looking all polished, pretending like she hadn't shredded everything we had together, made my stomach churn. The last few months had been a roller coaster. First, I was reeling from the shock of everything she'd done, then I got angry. I started figuring out how I could fight back. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. When I walked into that courthouse, the weight of it all hit me. There were so many things I'd never thought about, like the fact that she'd hired a top-notch lawyer, someone who had been in the game for years. I didn't have that kind of money. I was going in there with nothing but my gut and a few documents I'd managed to scrape together. No flashy legal defense, no deep pockets to pull from. But I wasn't backing down. I couldn't. And here's where things got messy. Laura. She knew exactly how to push my buttons. She showed up to the trial looking like the picture-perfect ex-wife, soft, innocent, and as though she couldn't hurt a fly. I could see it in her eyes though, she was trying to keep it together. Trying to make me look like the bad guy. Trying to manipulate the whole room into thinking she was the victim in this twisted little drama. Her lawyer was a shark, too. The guy was smooth. He'd fire off a question to me, and before I could even blink, he'd twist it into something that made me look like the fool. It wasn't a surprise. She'd been doing it for years, turning everything around, making me question myself, making me feel like I was overreacting, like I was the one causing the chaos. But this time? It wasn't gonna work. Not this time. I stuck to my story. Every damn detail. I laid out the evidence, the credit card statements, the photos of her with that guy I found out she'd been seeing behind my back, the texts, the emails. Everything. But the longer the trial went on, the more the doubts started creeping in. Was I missing something? Was I fighting a battle I couldn't win? Then, just when I thought I might actually have a shot, she pulled the one thing I didn't expect, her family. Her father. The guy who'd always been the good guy in this whole mess. The one who'd come to my defense when Laura and I first started dating, telling me how lucky I was to be with her. He was the last person I wanted to see in that courtroom, but there he was, sitting next to her lawyer, looking smug as hell, like he was about to save the day. Laura's lawyer called him to the stand, and what happened next still blows my mind. The guy turned on me. He had the audacity to sit there and paint me as the villain. He claimed I was just some angry ex-husband trying to drag his daughter's name through the mud, trying to ruin her life over something that was a mistake. And that's when I felt the heat rise in my chest. He was calling me a liar. A fool. He was acting like I was the one who had betrayed her, like I was the one who'd burned our entire life down. The worst part? People started to believe him. I saw it in their eyes. There was a shift. The judge's face didn't change, but the jury? I could tell they were starting to doubt me. I didn't know if it was the emotional appeal, or maybe I just wasn't good enough at this whole courtroom thing. But I was losing ground, fast. That's when Laura, cool as ice, dropped the bomb. Out of nowhere, she started playing the poor, misunderstood wife card. She started crying, for God's sake. Real tears, too. It was like something out of a bad movie. She told everyone how deeply sorry she was for the things she'd done, how she was just trying to get by after our marriage fell apart, how she didn't mean for any of it to happen. And for a second, just a split second, I almost bought it. Almost. She went on and on about how she wasn't responsible for the deaths. How it was all my fault that things fell apart. How I was too focused on my work, on everything except her. She made herself out to be the martyr. And I felt my hands start to shake. Was this really happening? Was I about to lose everything to a lie? But then something inside me snapped. I could feel it. The betrayal, the lies, the way she'd screwed me over, not just financially, but emotionally, it all came rushing back. She wasn't the victim. I was. And that's when I found the strength to speak up. I leaned forward in my chair, all the doubt gone. I stood tall and started tearing apart her story. Piece by piece. I pointed out the holes in her version of events. I reminded her of the emails she'd sent to her lover while pretending to be at work. I reminded her of the credit cards she'd signed up for in my name, all the late-night purchases. She was no victim. She was a criminal. It was a gamble, but I wasn't about to back down now. It felt like the air in the room shifted. The judge's expression changed ever so slightly, like he was finally seeing the real picture. But I wasn't out of the woods yet. Laura was about to make one last play. The court was on edge after my little speech. You could feel it in the air. Everyone was waiting for Laura's next move. She'd gone from the perfect wife to a woman who had been caught, and I could see it in her eyes. The mask was slipping. But I knew that wasn't the end of it. No, Laura wasn't going down without a fight. She never did. For a moment, she just sat there, looking defeated. The jury was silent. The judge leaned forward, scribbling something down. I'd thrown a wrench into her perfect little story. I could tell she wasn't prepared for me to hit back this hard. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the adrenaline still buzzing through me. But I had to keep it together. I couldn't let her see me sweat. Laura's lawyer, slick as ever, wasn't about to let things slide. He started firing questions at me, trying to pick apart my case, make me look like I didn't know what I was talking about. But I was ready for this. I'd gone through the evidence so many times that the facts practically rattled off my tongue. He started with the credit card bills, trying to argue that I was just as responsible for the debt as Laura. He made it seem like it was all part of some mutual mistake, like we'd both been reckless with money. I could feel the pressure mounting. I had to stand my ground, or it would all fall apart. I took a deep breath. We had joint accounts, I said, my voice steady. But the purchases she made in my name were her decisions. She didn't consult me, and I didn't know about any of it. She didn't care about our financial future. She didn't care about me. There was a brief silence before Laura's lawyer fired back. But isn't it possible you didn't know? Couldn't she have acted alone without you realizing? I gritted my teeth. I wanted to lash out, but I stayed calm. You're saying she's innocent? That I'm just some dumb guy who didn't know what was happening in my own home? No. She was sneaky. She knew what she was doing. This was planned. Laura looked like she wanted to strangle me, but she kept quiet. She was digging herself deeper by the second. Still, the pressure was unbearable. Every word felt like a battle. And then, just when I thought I was gaining ground, Laura pulled her final card. She stood up, calm as ever. I couldn't even tell if she was faking the tears this time or if she genuinely had them in her eyes. But she was good, really good. She spoke softly, as though she was the one being wronged. I'm sorry for everything, really. I never meant for any of this to happen, she said, her voice quivering just enough to make her sound sincere. But you have to understand, I didn't know what else to do. I felt trapped in a marriage where I was always second place. I felt alone. And, yes, I made mistakes. But I'm not the only one who's at fault here. I almost laughed. The nerve of this woman. She was trying to turn the entire thing around, trying to make me the villain, again. But I wasn't the one who'd gone behind her back. I wasn't the one who destroyed everything we had. I could feel my anger rising, but I knew I had to stay focused. Trapped? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. You were the one who couldn't stop running up the credit cards, The one who couldn't stop texting that guy behind my back. Don't talk to me about feeling trapped. You made a choice. A bad one. Her face turned pale, but she wasn't done. She shook her head slowly, like she was trying to convince herself as much as anyone else. I know I messed up. But you have no idea what it's like to be in my shoes. To feel like you're invisible in your own marriage. There it was. The manipulation. The same excuse she'd always used when things got tough. I knew I couldn't let her drag me down this road. I was right there, Laura. I was right there, but you didn't want to be found. You wanted to destroy me, to tear everything apart. I could see the shift in her. The cool, controlled exterior was cracking. And that's when her voice turned icy. You think this is over? She spat. You think you're going to get everything you want? You'll be paying for this for the rest of your life. There it was, the real Laura. The person I had been dealing with all along. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the misunderstood wife who made a mistake. She was the woman who thought she could destroy me without consequence. But I wasn't going to let that happen. The judge, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. Mr. Smith, Ms. Wallace, he said, his voice deep and authoritative. I think we've heard enough. It's time for both of you to step back and allow the court to deliberate. My heart was racing as I sat back down, glancing over at Laura. Her face was red, her jaw clenched. She wasn't used to losing control like this, and it felt good to see her on the defensive for once. She had no idea how far I was willing to go to make sure she didn't get away with everything. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. The tension was unbearable. My mind kept racing. Had I done enough? Had I made the right case? Did I have a shot at actually winning this? I looked at Laura one last time, and this time, I didn't flinch. She might have ruined my life once, but she wasn't going to do it again. And I wasn't the only one fighting. The courtroom was dead silent as the judge deliberated. I could feel the sweat on the back of my neck, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Laura was sitting across from me, her arms crossed, her face a mask of barely contained rage. She was seething, I could see that. But there was something else in her eyes, fear. She wasn't the confident, manipulative woman she'd been at the start of this battle. No, now she was panicking. And I had to admit, it felt damn good. The judge's gavel echoed through the room as he finally stood, signaling the end of the deliberation. He didn't waste time. He looked at us both and said, I've reviewed all the evidence presented. It's clear that Ms. Wallace's actions have caused significant financial harm to Mr. Smith. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. It was like a punch to the gut for Laura. I could see the color drain from her face as the reality hit her. She'd been caught. There was no way around it anymore. The judge wasn't buying her act. And, honestly, neither was anyone else in that room. Laura shot me a look that could have melted steel. I could feel her eyes burning into me as the judge continued, issuing the ruling on damages. The debts she'd racked up in my name? She would be held fully responsible for them. The money she'd stolen, the financial ruin she'd left me with? She'd be paying it all back. Every last penny. I tried not to smile. I really did. But I couldn't help it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The moment when she'd finally have to face the consequences of what she'd done to me. For years, I'd been the one to clean up after her mess, to fix the problems she caused. But this time, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The judge turned to me. Mr. Smith, you've been awarded full restitution for the damages. This will include the recovery of all your lost credit, along with any applicable fees for the debts incurred due to Ms. Wallace's actions. It was over. I won. I won. I didn't even realize I was smiling until I saw Laura's face twist in pure fury. She stood up abruptly, slamming her hands on the table. The room went still again, the tension hanging thick in the air. "This is bullshit," she shouted. "You can't do this to me. I won't let you." Her outburst caught the attention of everyone in the courtroom. The judge, looking unamused, slammed his gavel down again. "Ms. Wallace, I suggest you calm yourself or I'll have you removed from this court. Your behavior is completely inappropriate." But she wasn't listening. She was shaking, her voice barely containing the anger. "You don't get to win this. You don't get to ruin me like this." I could barely contain the satisfaction bubbling inside me. Laura had spent years trying to make me feel small, to make me doubt myself, and now she was the one losing control. It was almost poetic. She was getting a taste of her own medicine, and she hated every second of it. "Don't worry, Laura," I said, my voice calm but carrying an edge. "You'll be paying for this. Everything you took from me, you're going to pay it all back. That's the least you deserve." She turned away from me, her eyes wide with disbelief. I saw her take a deep breath, trying to compose herself, but it was clear she was rattled. The room felt electric, like we were standing at the edge of some cliff, and it was only a matter of time before someone went over. But I didn't feel bad for her. Not anymore. I'd spent so long trying to fix what she'd broken, trying to hold on to a marriage that wasn't worth saving. She didn't care about me. She didn't care about our life together. It had always been about her, and now, she was paying the price for it. As the judge called for the session to adjourn, Laura's lawyer started whispering to her. She didn't seem to be listening, though. Her eyes were still locked on me, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I could tell she was about to snap. When the judge finally dismissed us, I stood up. I felt like I was walking on air. After everything I'd been through, after all the heartache and financial devastation, I had come out on top. And as I walked past Laura, I couldn't resist one last jab. "You might want to start packing," I said, my voice quiet but heavy with meaning. "You've got a lot of debts to pay back." Her face went white, and for a second, I thought she might actually lose it. But she didn't. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the courtroom, her lawyer hurrying to catch up with her. I could hear her yelling from the hallway, her voice shrill and desperate. But I didn't care. She could scream all she wanted. It didn't change anything. I had won. She had lost. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally breathe again. I didn't know what was coming next, but I was ready for it. This was my moment, and nothing, not even Laura, was going to take that from me. A few weeks had passed since the trial. I kept expecting some kind of retaliation from Laura. Maybe some final blow, or a last-ditch attempt to ruin what was left of my life. But strangely enough, things stayed quiet. She had taken her loss hard. I mean, who wouldn't? After everything she'd done, the court had handed her exactly what she deserved. And for me, I was finally breathing easy again. The financial chaos she'd left me in was slowly starting to untangle. I'd started rebuilding my credit, and even though it wasn't a smooth ride, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. The lawsuits were filed, the debts were being cleared, and the weight I'd been carrying for so long was starting to lift. But it wasn't just about the money anymore. The freedom? That was the best part. The emotional toll it had taken on me to drag myself through this mess, to relive the betrayal and the lies every damn day, it was exhausting. But after the ruling, it was like I could finally close the door on that chapter of my life and move on. It didn't hurt that I had people in my corner, too. Friends, family, people who knew what I'd been through and were there to celebrate the victory with me. That's something I hadn't had in a long time. not the support, not the trust. But this time, I felt like I had earned something for myself. No more hiding behind the curtain of what she'd done. No more second-guessing myself or wondering if I was ever good enough. But the thing that hit me hardest in all of this was how much I'd let her change me. I spent years trying to keep everything together, trying to fix her mistakes, trying to make it work. I'd been so wrapped up in her drama, I lost sight of who I was. That's a lesson I'll never forget. I shouldn't have waited this long to take control of my own life. I kept replaying that final moment in court, her storming out, her face red with rage as she realized the game was over. She thought she could get away with it. Thought she could take everything from me and leave me in the dust. But the best part? She never expected me to stand up for myself. She thought I was just going to roll over and take it, like always. And that's where she was wrong. She underestimated me, and I think that's what killed her the most. A few days after the trial, I got a letter. It was from her lawyer, and I braced myself for more legal threats. But this wasn't what I expected. It was a settlement offer. Apparently, she had realized that the court wasn't going to be the magic bullet she'd hoped for. She was looking to pay me off and try to settle the debt once and for all. I could practically hear the desperation in the tone of the letter. I didn't bother replying. No settlement. No deal. She'd gotten her chance to make things right, and she'd blown it. This wasn't about money anymore, it was about principle. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking she could still manipulate me, still buy her way out of the consequences. She'd taken enough from me already. So, I moved forward. Slowly, yes, but steadily. I focused on getting back to the life I had almost forgotten about. I threw myself into work, took up some new hobbies, and started rethinking what my future could look like. The old me, the guy who'd been blinded by love and lost in a toxic relationship, felt like someone else. I didn't miss him, not one bit. The new me was stronger, smarter, and way more aware of the type of people I wanted in my life. Then came the inevitable. I ran into her, about a month after the trial. I was at a cafe, grabbing a coffee, minding my own business. And there she was. Laura. Standing right in front of me. I don't know what I was expecting. I mean, I knew I'd probably see her again someday. But nothing had prepared me for the look in her eyes. It wasn't the cold, hard rage I'd seen in court. It was something else. Vulnerability? Regret? Hell, maybe even a bit of guilt? It caught me off guard, but I didn't flinch. She took a step toward me, and for a second, I thought she might apologize, but then she just stood there, awkwardly. The silence stretched on until she finally spoke. "I never thought it would end like this," she said, voice soft. I raised an eyebrow. "How did you think it was going to end?" She sighed, looking down at her shoes like she was searching for the right words. "I don't know. I guess I thought I could fix things. I thought I could fix everything. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to." She was looking for something from me, some kind of closure, some kind of validation. But I didn't owe her that. I'd already taken the only thing that mattered, my life, my future, my peace. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking I still cared about anything she had to say. I just nodded. "You should have thought about that before you ran up my credit card bills and ruined everything. It's a little late for fixing things, don't you think?" And with that, I walked away. I didn't look back. I knew the chapter was closed. Laura wasn't part of my life anymore, not in any real way. The victory wasn't just about winning the lawsuit or getting some money back, it was about reclaiming my own life, my dignity, my peace of mind. And that's something no amount of money or manipulation could ever take from me again.